depth of significance. Revana Quintana and Osvaldo Mora, leaders of the bilingual ministry Unity Community of Light, are here every Sunday morning to bless you with either an inspiring dialogue and or meditation based on the powerful Unity teachings. Teachings that we are certain will lead you to a space of deep personal transformation. Please be welcome to Encuentro Espiritual English. We are a gentle voice that expresses itself powerfully through hearts consecrated to God and truth, and that by its commitment to educate spiritually, pray with devotion, and gather in family groups, amplify the powerful light of the Christ presence to the collective, all leading to true abundance. We are Unity Community of Light, a bilingual Unity ministry that offers an online programming in addition to workshops, retreats, and services in person internationally. Our commitment to the transformation of the collective consciousness is our priority. We are here by divine appointment to fulfill this sacred mission, one that we know can only be accomplished through our own transformation. Revana Quintana and Osvaldo Mora and other leaders are fully present to offer you the powerful Unity teachings that will change your life forever. We welcome you from the bottom of our hearts.
Good morning and welcome to Unity Community of Light. I am Tammy Johns and I'm delighted to be here with you on this leg of the journey on the quest. I would like to reintroduce my friend Deb, who was with us last week when we talked about personal powerlessness. Deb, can you just kind of share a little bit about your spiritual journey and what you're up to these days?
Sure. I think my spiritual journey has been a complex one to me. I grew up a Southern Baptist, and then for many years I was involved in a non-denominational Christian church. But over the past 4 years, I have migrated to a space where I'm going to call it undefined. I'm not really defining myself as anything, just a spiritual person on a journey to be aligned with the universe, with God, and to live that way as effectively as possible. So right now, I'm really focused on meditation. I'm focused on a practice where spiritual practice that involves kind of some of the Ayurvedic kind of principles, a lot of like sort of Eastern wisdom, tradition, beliefs. But I don't sort of define myself as like Buddhist or Hindu or anything, just spiritual. That makes
Right.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to my journey as well. Exactly. I grew up there, Baptist, as those of you who've been watching this broadcast over time, I've explained I grew up Baptist, then kind of went to that non-denominational for a while. Well, then I went to the AME church and Methodist church, and then just kind of I say I'm kind of eclectic. I mean, I studied Buddhism for a while, and I've got an eclectic spirituality. And I think it is whatever we're on our path, that's where we show up, where we're supposed to do. And I think God, the universe, the divine, higher power, whatever you want to call it, I think is okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. For many years, I would have not agreed with that statement. But I think now I'm in the space of, and maybe this is funny to say, but I think it's kind of interesting to me that we can neither prove the existence nor disprove the the existence of God, right? We can't prove it or disprove it. And I just
Mhm.
think that's interesting because I feel like God is something that we experience, right? More than a theorem that we prove. It's just like we know there that it's real. To me, it's like love. You can't really prove love, but you experience love. So I kind of see God in that way, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. We experience God. I love that. And that's going to be, we can talk a little bit about that as we talk about this topic for this week. We're talking about surrendering, and that can be how we experience God, how we go
Yeah.
about and surrender our lives to doing that. Um, and what the distinction I want to make too is around giving up and letting go versus surrender. Because a lot of people think they don't want to acknowledge that I have to give up control. We talked a lot about control last week. And we as human beings, and I also acknowledge that I am a control person, we don't want to give up the control. We want to be in power. And surrendering is another way, another leg on our journey where we can continue to grow when we do that, when we let go. And it is about giving into a higher power and knowing that there's something greater than ourselves that has control over this and that we don't have to do everything we need to do. When we give up, there are times, there are in many spiritual traditions, giving up is also a way of showing that you're growing on the path, because you want to give up some things that are not serving your greatest good,
Mm.
whether they're an experience or a relationship or something in that path. What do you think about that, Deb?
Yeah, I think framed like that, I totally agree with that. Giving up is in that context is um, wisdom, really. I think when people think of giving up in a different context, like just sort of quitting, that's different to me than surrendering. Surrendering is about sort of giving over, like this acknowledgement, I'm giving this over. I'm because you're more powerful than I am, not like I'm uh, quitting, like giving up on myself, my life, my dreams, my goals. I'm just acknowledging that I don't have the power to move whatever it is or change whatever it is in this specific context, right? Um, which I think is, like I said, different than just I quit. I quit to me is like
Mhm.
I'm angry. It's like negative energy to me.
Yes, totally. Yes, it is on that vibrational level of energies that we have. It's that quitting and giving up. It's like, no, we're not doing that, not giving up and doing that.
Mhm,
But surrender is actually on, I believe, on that higher level of
mhm,
vibrational energy where we
mhm.
are recognizing there is a power greater than
Yeah,
us, where we can rely on, and we know that we're not out there by ourselves. I
yeah,
think that that's helpful, and it takes a great amount of discernment and wisdom, and we
yeah.
can get that through whether it's prayer, meditation, reading sacred texts, wherever people feel like they can get that from. I think that that's really important.
Yeah. I like the story from, the text about Jean and the sort of daughter-in-law or
Yes.
stepdaughter. Yeah, not daughter-in-law. And it just sort of reminds me of an experience that I have with clients often that you can want something so bad that you're blinded by that desire and you're also not necessarily approaching things in a way that's like constructive or productive or going to help you, right? Because you're so concerned about or so focused on whatever it is that you want. And so I think surrender in those cases is absolutely what we need to do. Like the moment she let go and was like, okay, I'm trying to control something that I don't control. I'm just going to let go of this. And then we'll see. I love how the moment she did that, it sort of all came together. And I feel like that's like a metaphor for our life. That's exactly what happens with us. The moment that we like, okay, I'm done. I'm letting go of this. My
Right.
way's not working.
Exactly. And just for those of you who have not had a chance to read the text, it is around, there was a, Jean married a guy who had a daughter, and her mother had passed away. And there was a lot of tension in that relationship. And it seemed like the harder Jean pushed, the more the stepdaughter would just like
Yeah.
revolt and fight against it. And it wasn't until Jean just said, I've got to let go and I have to surrender. And then they were able to rebuild the relationship, or not rebuild, but actually build
Yeah.
fruitful relationship.
Yeah. Very powerful.
It was a very powerful story. And I think a lot of times, because when we think about it, until we surrender, God can't really do the work.
Hmm.
While Gene was trying to go ahead and push and push and push, I feel like that's sometimes we're pushing a boulder uphill, or we're fighting against a wave. They talk about that in the book as well, where we're standing and these waves are coming in, and we just keep fighting and fighting. And until we decide we're going to just dive under the wave and let the wave come over us, are we going to be able to actually surrender and say, and let us bring us back to shore, or bring us back to the path that we're supposed to be on? Because sometimes we can get off that path, and until we surrender, we can't find our way back.
Yeah. Well, I think, let me just speak for myself. When I'm doing that, it's because I think what I'm doing is right. Like I think that the woman in the example, right, she thought her way was right.
Right.
And sometimes like it's hard for us to accept that, what we're doing isn't actually working. And I see that with clients all the time. And I experienced that with my son. My I have two children, and one is 27, the other is 24. And if you're a parent, you recognize like you have a love and a passion and I don't know, a commitment for your kids that you don't even think is humanly possible. Like you
Mhm.
want their life to work out at any cost, really. More sometimes than even they do. And I remember when my son was, he had just graduated from high school, and he uh, was in, community college, and he wasn't really a fan of college. He was just he attended, but I think that was more for me and his dad. He wasn't really a fan. And so he just really like he flunked out. He failed. He wasn't, and he's got a near genius IQ. And so him
Mhm.
failing was like I knew like, okay, something's wrong. And so but I wasn't really ready to let go of college at that time. So I just like came up with this whole program kind of for him to like make sure that he's like studying, and I was just driving the bus. I was like doing all this stuff to like hold him accountable, checks and balances, checking in weekly. It was ridiculous. And then one day I was like, you know what? He doesn't want this. He does not want college. He doesn't want this. He doesn't learn this way. I can't make him. But I've done everything. And so now I need to just completely let go. And so we had a conversation. I told him that I'm done. You got to really figure this out. I'm here for you, but I'm done. And now he still doesn't like college, but he is studying cybersecurity. He not that he doesn't like to learn. He doesn't like formalized school. So like this is a kid who'll teach him. He's teaching himself physics and calculus, right? By the way, um, but like he doesn't
Right.
like formalized, right? And cybersecurity, and he's doing really well. But he had to find his own path and his own way. I was trying to make the path and make the way, and I had to like let go. And I kind of think like that's kind of how we can be sometimes. Like we have an idea in our mind, we're not really willing or ready to let go because we think it's right. So we just keep going until like finally it's like, okay, this no longer makes sense, right?
Right, exactly. And I love that story. And it's probably sometimes it's kind of like God sits back and watches us, as it's like, you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing until you surrender and say, well, I'm just going to let go of this. And then God, like I said, God can't really work until we decide to do
Yeah.
that. And probably your son was looking at this like, Mom, I've got this. I need you to let go,
Yeah.
probably. And probably he was a lot happier,
Oh, I'm
um, decided
to
when
be
you start
sure.
pushing, right?
Yeah, to be sure. Yeah, he's grateful that I figured it out. It wasn't his path to learn; it was mine. So
Right. And surrendering it's very scary, because we want to control our circumstances. We want, like you said earlier, we think we're right. We think
yeah.
we're right in our path and how we're going about things. Like on my spiritual journey, my friends will always call me, "You're such a survivor." And I thought, well, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? It really isn't. It's just how I was. But it was because I was a fighter. I
Mhm.
felt like I was this gladiator. And I wore that badge really proudly. I'm like, I'm going to fight one Goliath after another. And I'm going to get up. My face will be in the dust and everything. And I'll rejuvenate myself and I'll get up and I'll fight another Goliath. And I thought, yes, that's what my life is supposed to be about. Well, how exhausting.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a time in my life where I had gone through a lot of loss and in a short period of time. And like I said, it was just like fighting one Goliath after another. And I felt like I just can't get up anymore. I was getting more depressed. I was talking to friends. I had a therapist. I was taking medication and I was trying all these things. And I felt, okay, the harder I fight, the more I'll be able to get through this. And I knew that I was doing the right thing for myself. But it wasn't until one night I was like, God, I can't. What do you want from me? And
Yeah.
I heard the words, let go. And I thought, let go? Wait a minute. What does that mean? I can't do that. It was a fresh concept to me because I was used to solving all of my own problems.
Mhm.
But when I did, things began to just unfold. And my grief over all my loss, it began to diminish over time. And I feel like, okay, now I'm in the point where I'm living my best life. I mean, that was a while ago, but sometimes it takes time before we can go ahead and surrender and do that.
Yeah, that reminds me of a personal story and another story from my life, Tammy, that
Okay.
you're wrestling with God like that. Yeah. Several years ago, I was a power of attorney, like the healthcare provider for my dad who had Alzheimer's. And so for 8 years, I managed his care. 4 of them, he was in a facility, the first four. And then the last 4 years, he spent mainly with me and my family, living
Mm,
in my home. And if you've ever done that, it's like one of the hardest things you'll ever do. And I certainly was that term sandwich generation was apropos, right? Like I have my own family, my own children, and then I'm taking care of my father. And it was just really intense. I mean, I'm feel grateful that I was able to provide that care, but it was also the most challenging thing I'd ever done. And I found myself, there would be moments where I was just weeping, in the middle of the night because I was so exhausted and this was so intense. Um, and I remember one particular night, I just had reached my fill and I wasn't ready to put him in a home because I'd kind of seen how some of the homes were. Um, but I was at the end of my rope. And I remember I got up in the middle of the night. I went downstairs and I was crying out to God and I was praying, and I was crying out like, you got to help me. You got to do something. And like you, I heard this voice that came back like, no, you do. Like, I'm
wow.
yelling at God, you got to change something. And God was like, no, you do. And it was sort of that, I don't know if this makes any sense, but it's just sort of this clarity when you hear that, like everything stopped. No, I have to do something. And I knew at that moment I needed to put my dad in a home because I had reached the point where that's what I needed to do. And I remember the next day there was a home that I had looked at before but didn't want to put in there. This was like 4 years prior. I didn't know where this home was. I didn't have the address. I knew the area, but I didn't have the address. So I thought the next day I'm going to drive myself to that place and try to find it. So I drove there. I'm driving around in circles. And then I just sort of prayed, please lead me to wherever this is. And I got this feeling to sort of take a right turn. And I did. And it was on that street. I found the home. Yeah.
Wow.
And so, when you say things line up, it's just sort of like that's what happens when you surrender, when you let go. Because I was trying to manage all of that care on my own and I couldn't do it. So, anyway.
Yeah. Wow, that is a powerful story about surrender because we wear ourselves out. We're trying to figure everything out. Just, we think we can manage it. And God is sitting back, or the universe is like, well, if you let go, if you surrender, then I can help you. And that is a beautiful story. And then even down to the point of trying to find the home where you're looking at, it's like, I don't know where I'm going. And we talked a little bit last week about personal powerlessness. Well, it's outside of my resource. I don't know the direction. I don't know where this is. But then when you let go, it's like you were led to go and to
Yeah,
turn right and find it.
exactly. I
Yeah,
love that I love that about God.
I know, right? Exactly. It's like if we just surrender, God says, I've got this. I've got
Yeah,
it. I've got that. And we know that we're not alone because we try to fight these struggles and our powers, and it's not easy. Granted, I don't like to surrender.
yeah,
Yet sometimes it is the best thing for me where
yeah,
I just say, all right, I'm okay. I raise my hands, or whatever surrender looks like to you. Sometimes we just have to do that in order for God to work.
absolutely. Absolutely right.
Right, exactly. And I did when I let go of that gladiator, and I don't wear that badge because I don't want to fight like that. A lot of people, and I don't know if you're out there, those of you who are watching, think of a circumstance where you felt like you were really fighting towards something. What did that feel like? And then when you surrender, what did that feel like? We get such a sense of clarity in our decision making and in our path forward when we let go and when we surrender. Deb, do you have any final thoughts on surrender or that we've been talking about so far? Anything?
Hmm. Not really. Just I guess the only thing I would say is do it. If you need to,
I
you know,
know, right?
better
Because
better to do that than to be dragged, across concrete. I mean, like, yeah, I think it, as you said, like you've learned to let go and you don't wear that badge. And I just think, yeah, me too. It took a lot of struggles prior to learning that lesson, but now I will readily acquiesce.
I know exactly because I know the difference,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that I want to share with people is that until you really let go and figure out and see what God is able and willing to do for you in your life, then you don't really know what it feels like. So I would
Mm,
encourage you, if there's something that you're struggling with, just release, just let go. And it's okay. Sometimes, Deb, you were saying, you were angry at God, and I've been angry at God and just yelling like, well, what do you want from me? What do you want to do? And then sometimes we have to go back and say, I'm the one that has to
yeah,
change.
yeah.
And just ask yourself the question, what is it that I have to change in letting go and surrendering? So, Deb, thank you so much for yet another powerful conversation that we've had and the many insights. And thank you again for sharing your personal stories. I think that's always important because people feel that they're not alone. They're like, yeah, I've been through something like this. And I remember when Tammy said this, or I remember when Deborah said this, then you know you're not alone. So if you have heard anything that resonates with you and you would like to donate to this ministry, please go to unitycoml.org and donate. And let us close with prayer. Dear God of many names, I turn my life over to you, God, as I surrender myself to you. I feel unfolded in peace and comfort. I know that with you, everything will be okay. Thank you, God, for your perfection as it moves through me now. I surrender. And so it is. Amen, Amen, and Ashe.
Thanks,
Thank
Tamara.
you very much for joining us, and thank you so much, Deborah.
Unity COML, Unity Comunidad de Luz, Community of Light. It's a ministry of love, big commitment to help everyone who's ready explore principles of truth that can really bring healing, prosperity, and all the good that God always has in store for each one of us. If you feel truly in your heart that we are serving you and that you feel that you are expanding in every way and would love to give back and make sure that others are benefited just as well, we highly encourage you to donate. Do a love offering based on the love, appreciation, gratitude, and joy that you are receiving from the source to transform your life. Visit us at unitycoml.org and do what is yours to do from that place that knows that there's abundance for all.
As always say, asking is giving, and that's how we support our ministry, your needs, our help, and everything goes together.
Divine love, through you, through us, blesses and multiplies all that we are, all that we have, all that we give, and all that we receive. And so it is.
So it is.
Amen.